Hi, thanks so much for joining me on the Listen Up Girl podcast. This is your daily LGBTQ plus news podcast. I'm Zach Randles-Friedman, and today is Tuesday, June 16th, 2026. We are day 16 of Pride Month. We are officially past the halfway point. The back half of June is in our sights, and we have only 12 days until the New York City Pride Parade March lands on the exact anniversary of the Stonewall uprising. The energy in this community right now is something, so let's get into today's news. With our first story, the Carmageddon tour continues. Nancy Mace is done. Let's start with the kind of news that gives everyone a reason to light a candle and say thank you to the universe. Nancy Mace, the South Carolina Congresswoman, who made anti-trans harassment basically her entire personality for the last 2 years, who shouted slurs at hearings, who pushed bathroom bans at the United States Capitol, and who said trans identity was delusional and mental instability, ran for governor of her state, and she got destroyed. She finished fifth in last Tuesday's Republican primary, fifth in a crowded field. She pulled just over 12% of the vote. Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette and Attorney General Alan Wilson advanced to the runoff. Nancy Mace did not. She is now out of Congress and out of the governor's race, meaning that come January, Nancy Mace will hold 0 elected offices anywhere in the United States. And here's the moment that the community is absolutely living for. While the votes were being counted, trans Congresswoman Sarah McBride was speaking at a national pride gala in Washington, D.C. The room booed when Nancy Mace's name came up, and then they gave McBride a standing ovation. Bride looked out over the crowd and simply said, "Happy Pride, Nancy." The Republican Party members of South Carolina had plenty to say about Mace in the aftermath. Words like cry bully, no moral compass, and buried every bridge she ever crossed. These were not Democrats saying this. This was her own party. She ran on a culture war rage against our community, and she lost. That's the story. Happy Pride indeed. Next, Ghana's parliament just passed one of the world's harshest anti-LGBTQ plus bills. Now for something that will bring you back down to earth, because as much as we celebrate wins at home, what's happening internationally requires our full attention. Ghana's parliament passed the Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill earlier this month, and if the President John Mahama signs it, it becomes one of the harshest anti-LGBTQ laws on the planet. What's in this bill? Up to 3 years in prison for identifying as LGBTQ, up to 5 years for what it calls willful promotion or support of LGBTQ activities, and a duty to report clause, which means if you know someone who is LGBTQ and don't tell authorities, you could also face prison time. So here's the thing. This doesn't come from nowhere. This bill was shaped, funded, and pushed in significant part by the U.S.-based Christian nationalist organization Family Watch International, ties to the Heritage Foundation, and the authors of Project 2025. American groups exported this agenda to Ghana, to Uganda, to a growing list of African nations. A conference took place in Africa earlier this month, the fourth in a series where parliamentaries from more than 20 African countries endorsed a proposed charter that would remake social policy across the entire continent to conform to Christian nationalist ideology. President Mahama said that he will sign the bill. Human rights organizations and LGBTQ advocates in Ghana are terrified and they are fighting back. This is not a distant issue. It's a direct line from the same political movement attacking our rights in the United States to the criminalization of LGBTQ identity. Abroad, we see it, we say it out loud. And just as a reminder, the United States, across all the United States, just in 2026, have over 700 legislations that are out to be voted on just in 2026 that are anti-LGBTQ+. Over 700 in 1 year. And the year's not even half over yet, or it's half over now. But that's insane. They are coming for us. That's why it's important to listen to this news so you stay informed. Next, he was 18 at Stonewall, and he wants you to know what really happened. This week, LGBTQ Nation published a remarkable interview with Mark Segal, one of the last surviving eyewitnesses of the Stonewall uprising. He was 18 years old when he arrived in New York from Philadelphia in the spring of 1969. He had told his parents that he was going to school. The truth was he had seen a TV show about gay people living in New York City, and he needed to find his people. A few weeks after he arrived, on the night of June 28, 1969, Mark Segal was at Stonewall Inn when the police raided it. He's done hundreds of interviews over the years, but this one is different because what Segal wants to push back on is the mythology that has grown up around Stonewall. The idea that people were already on the edge because of Judy Garland's funeral earlier that week. The idea that spontaneous, chaotic moment that nobody planned. Segal says no. He says people who were there, who had been raided before, who had been harassed before, who had been having their money extorted by police for years, they were ready. He says what happened over the next nights, the organizing that followed, the chalk messages on the sidewalk, calling people back to Stonewall the next night, that was intentional. That was political. That was a revolution. He just opened a new Philly Pride Visitor Center in Philadelphia just in time for America's 250th anniversary. With 12 days until New York City Pride March ends at the steps of Stonewall Inn, and there's no better time to sit with his words. The full interview is on LGBTQ Nation's website, and I'll have the link in the show notes so you can read it. Next, La Vistas Culture Awards are tomorrow night, and they are a queer event. Tomorrow night on Wednesday, June 17th, the Las Vistas Culture Awards air on Bravo and Peacock simultaneously, starting at 9 o'clock Eastern. This is the 5th annual edition, and it's hosted by two of our own, Bowen Yang and Matt Rogers. If you are not already a Las Corichas person, first of all, what are you doing? But also, here is your entry point. The show is based on a podcast of the same name, which Yang and Rogers have been making for years. And it's essentially a 2-hour comedy variety special with over 100 award categories that range from deeply sincere to completely unhinged. Past categories have included things like Decision, Best Decision Ever Made, and Outfit of the Year. Guests have included everyone from Real Housewives to Broadway stars to people who simply had a big moment in pop culture. The reason this matters beyond being genuinely great television is that Yang and Rogers are two gay men who have built a mainstream platform that centers around queer sensibility unapologetically. Bowen Yang was on Saturday Night Live, and Matt Rogers has been on the defining comedy voices of his generation. They have created something that speaks directly to the LGBTQ plus audiences in a way that major networks do. It's Pride Month, it's on tomorrow, and it's exactly the kind of queer joy that this community deserves right now. So let me bring it home with a little context about where we are this month. 12 days from now, on Sunday, June 28th, 2026, the 57th annual New York City Pride Parade March will step off at noon from 26th Street and 5th Avenue and travel south through Manhattan and end at Christopher Street at the corner of Stonewall Inn, which is where it all began. June 28th this year is not just the end of Pride Month, it is the exact calendar anniversary of the night of the Stonewall Uprising, June 28th, 1969. The night that Mark Segal was there, the night that Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera and hundreds of other LGBTQ people fought back. The night that had started the chain of events that led to every Pride Parade that has happened anywhere in the world since. New York City's Pride theme this year is For All of Us, a direct reference to Marsha P. Johnson's words, "There is no pride for some of us without liberation for all of us." In a year when trans people are under relentless legislative attack, when LGBTQ rights are being rolled back across the United States and exported for dismantling abroad, the choice of the theme is not accidental. The march is free. It's broadcast live on WABC7 and streamed globally. Over 75,000 registered participants and estimated 2.5 million spectators. We are 12 days out, and if you've never stood on Fifth Avenue and watched the scale of what this looks like, it's something. Every year when I lived in New York, I went, and it was one of the best days of my year every year. So that's your news. Day 16 of Pride Month. Nancy Mace out. Ghana watching closely. Stonewall honoring its witnesses. Tomorrow night, watch Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang. And 12 days until we arrive at the corner where it all started. Follow Listen Up Girl wherever you get your podcast. Share today's episode with someone who needs to feel it. Make sure you give me a rating on this podcast because, you rate it, more people hear it. And I will see you tomorrow with more LGBTQ plus news. Thanks for listening.